Amy, Troy, Logan, and Brooke. Which one do you personally identify as? Because personally, I see myself as having Amy's quirk, or like maybe it's just undiagnosed neurodivergency, and Brooke's inability to commit to her dreams. Alrighty, I'm gonna be reviewing Apples Never Fall, the on-screen adaptation, the TV show that is on Peacock, and then reviewing the book. I already reviewed the book in my last book video, so if you want, you can check that out. But this is more so just looking at the similarities and differences between Apples Never Fall, the TV show, and the book. This video is going to be split up into me giving you the synopsis, even though I don't think that you need the synopsis if you're clicking on this video. Just in case somebody's a little bit curious, I'm going to be defining what the heck this book even was. I'm going to be rating the book versus the show. I'm going to be talking about the most standout differences, casting, how casting was by the description of the book versus the show, the most standout differences, and what I liked about the book that the show lacked. The synopsis. I already gave the synopsis in my book review earlier of the thing that you can go look at if you want to. So Bibliophile describes Apples Never Fall as it follows the 4 Delaney siblings after the disappearance of their mother, Joy Delaney. The police soon after identify their father, Stan, as a possible person of interest as they try to unravel the mystery of what happened to her or where she went. The 4 siblings, Troy, Brooke, Logan, and Amy, they're forced to confront their truths about their relationships with each other, their significant others, and their parents, and what they find out about their parents' marriage. I'm sorry if I keep looking over here. I just am reading my notes because I do not want to miss a single thing. And there's so many specific details that I noted as I was reading the book as well as I was watching the show. I gave the book a 5 out of 5, and I'm giving the show a 4 out of 5. The show was great, okay? Like, I am not looking at the show like, oh my god, they really fumbled it with this. No, because I think that a lot of books, you read them and then you watch their shows or their movie adaptations and you're like, what the heck? Ew, what the heck? This was not like a what the heck type thing. This was like a, I mean, they did, like, they kept it interesting for the people who've already read the book and kept us a little bit on our toes to say like, oh my, that wasn't in the book. That's a good improvement. But overall, the book just was so much better. It was just a lot deeper in every, like, it just had such a great analysis of everybody's life, personalities, the layers of power, you know, and the show has only so much time to dive into all of that. So I find that there was a lot of things missing from the show that was included in the book, but that's like exclusively meant for the book. So I really don't mind because the book has to do what the book has to do and the TV show has to convey what it has to convey in an appropriate amount of time. So the first difference that I do want to talk about is the fact that the book, and this was major, okay? The book was set in the suburbs of Sydney, Australia. Ugh, I hated that. I'm sorry. And then the show is in Florida. Is it in Miami? I thought that was an interesting adaptation because Australian culture, especially because I read the book on audio, I heard the Australian accent in my ear. And sometimes they would joke about things that like you would not joke about in America. And I really liked that added spice. Like for Amy's unaliving attempt, I can't say that thing. They like bring it up in the book. They bring it up and it's like a real moment, but in the show it's like a, oh, Amy, we didn't know it. But in the book they like bring it up how they found that Amy attempted, but they like almost make fun of her for it. They do not address it as seriously in the book as they do the show. And I think that is very much so an American thing because I think American audiences would not take to that. And I think that for Australian humor, it's just a little bit more dry and it's a little bit more, the casting, let's just get into the casting. The casting was nearly perfect. I'll say nearly just because there were some things that I was like, that doesn't quite connect with me, even though I don't really remember the description. That doesn't really connect, you know. Okay, so first of all, I do just want to say, it was very obvious that some people were just not, like, meant to be like, were not originally American. They're casted into this American show. And, like, I think, I don't know anything about casting or literally anything, but the fact that it was an Australian show set in America, I was wondering kind of, like, how many people were interested in the Australian show in Australia, like excited for it to come out in Australia, and then for them to be disappointed, be like, it's an American show, what the heck? This is an Australian book. So we have 2 original Aussie actors and then 1 from New Zealand, and you can kind of guess like who the 3 people are. Just like take a second amongst the family to guess like who. I knew it like immediately. Of course, outside of like Stan, who just like kept his accent, like didn't disguise it. Sometimes I was like, is he, or is he simply just like doing a bad job hiding his accent? But we only found out in the end that he was like came to this country to flee from his dad, his abusive dad. So I'll also talk about how I found that casting was nearly perfect, and talk about the 2 people that were Australian who had to be American for the show, which you can probably guess. Joy. There's something about Annette Bening, which iconic person to cast for Joy, that in the beginning didn't really sit with me, because in the book they do describe Joy as like, and this I guess doesn't make sense for like a tennis player. I was gonna say they do describe her as kind of more dainty or fragile. I don't know. I feel like they describe her as more a petite person, but since she is a tennis player, it more makes sense to have somebody like Annette Bening come into that role, because I could see Annette Bening being like a powerful tennis player versus like in the book, it was described as like one of their neighbors thought that initially Joy and Stan were like not married, like that Joy was like somebody who was like maybe his like daughter, or like I don't know, like a younger figure as opposed to the mother. So in my head, I was like, oh, she's going to be like a petite little woman, whatever. But she's not really. She's like a woman, a tennis player. But later, she grew on me, I find. So I didn't really connect with her in the beginning. But then in the end, she really won me over, especially with her specific episode and her acting. That was great. I just needed to see some emotion from her that wasn't necessarily strength. I don't know. And I felt like I maybe would have gotten that with like a... And is it problematic for me to be like, I thought that she was going to be more petite? I feel like that's kind of bad of me to say, but if we're going off book descriptions and what the book puts in your head, that's just what the book... But I also can recognize, maybe I expect a woman of like a very powerful, strong, like tennis player man to also be petite and fragile, because that's just my expectations of like man and woman relationships. But I think it's a weird. Anyway, Stan could not be more perfectly cast. Oh my god. It's like he like came directly from the book into this TV show. It was amazing. Did they not address the fact that he had a New Zealand accent? Because like you could hear it, but like they weren't telling us like anything until the end, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, he was like literally, from the fact that like I could read him, or that I listened to him, and then also his voice translated, I thought it was perfect. Alison Brie as Amy wasn't nearly perfect, but they made her hair just brown in the show, but it was colored in the book, and I think it was either blue or purple, one of those colors that's like showing that the person is like a little bit more of a free spirit. And I wish that they had kind of done that, but they also did change her persona to be more of like a free-spirited, I'm a life coach, as opposed to in the book she's just like a little bit more manic and like has a little bit less direction in life. Brooke, I don't know what I was thinking of in the show, but I was thinking maybe somebody who looked a little bit more like Alison Brie. But Brooke, something about her seemed like slightly off in relation to the character that I listened to, but ultimately I grew to like her. She is the person that is an Aussie. I did not catch that. I caught it from Logan, who is another Aussie, but I did not catch that she was slipping. Troy was perfect. Oh my god. Troy, of course, just had to be the rich douchebag, and of course Plop is perfect for that character. Obviously Plop from The Office, but he also did play another rich douchebag in White Lotus, if you saw that season. And he just does it so well. I feel bad for Jake. I mean, I don't feel bad for Jake Lacy. Oh my god, I feel bad that he's getting all these successful, like, typecast roles. I feel that in the way that I'm like, are we just gonna see him as this character from now on? Logan, his long hair and calm demeanor were on the money with the book. But the show, to me, for something about him, I think it was a little bit of his accent was slipping because he is the other Aussie. his accent was slipping a little bit throughout the TV show, but I watched an interview and it said that before this, he was like a painter. He was painting, he was doing little like odd jobs, I guess, to fill the time and like to make income as he was acting. And I think this was like his one, not his one, his like first big thing. So like I think maybe a little bit of what I imagined just didn't match up to him. So, but I did imagine the long hair and calm demeanor and his like kind of like easy way of going through life does fit his physical description, but it just didn't connect too much. Okay. The standout differences. So we have the opening scene. Their conversation is on Zoom as opposed to being at the restaurant. So in the book, they open up as they're at a restaurant, they're sitting and eating, and the waitress is essentially kind of the narrator for them. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? I read this on audio. I get everything from the library, so I have to return it, so I can't like reference anything, and I can't jog my memory. I didn't read this book that long ago. It was maybe like a month ago, but it still is kind of fresh in my mind, but I'll probably forget a few things. So we initially see the waitress introduces them and is like, their family is so big, and I don't know, like she overhears their family and reports back to the book. But we see that they're over Zoom talking about everything, and we're like, what the heck is going on? Thought it was very interesting for them to be doing that, as opposed to the waitress kind of like catching their eye. But I thought it was a good choice to switch that up. I'm just going to be talking about the stand. I'm not going to talk about literally every single difference that was made. I'm just going to be talking about the things that I noted. So if you catch something, just let me know in the comments or something. The scene in which we are introduced to Savannah slash the scene as well as her traits that were different was that in the book, Savannah plays, and also keep in mind, I listened to it so I heard her voice. In the book, Savannah plays a lot more naive. Like, she plays a little bit more like, oh, I don't know, it's just kind of wanting to see. She doesn't play as, it's in the word is incompetent, but seem a little bit more like in control in the way that she was like introduced. You don't look at her and see like, oh, this is just a girl who doesn't know what she's doing with her life. You see like, this is a girl who got into a bad situation, just went to the Delaney's out of like, just, oh, logically, I'll just stop at this house. So the difference in the book versus the TV show is the whole time she was assaulted by her boyfriend. The difference is the book has her being assaulted at like her home, and then she tells the Delaney's like, I took a taxi and just drove for as long as told him to drive for as long as I could, and I just ended up at your like house and your doorstep. And it's like, okay. And the Delaney's were like, okay, what the heck? I think that did not make as much sense as the TV show explanation. The TV show explanation really saved this whole thing, because it's just, my boyfriend and I got into a fight in the car. I stopped over. I saw your house. Thank God I saw your house. Your house was the only one with the lights on, which interesting, but such a good explanation to be like, my boyfriend hit me, so I have to, please help me. Like, I think that was great. This was a lot more believable for the show. Yeah, Savannah to me, I will describe more about what I liked about the book that the show lacked in relation to Savannah, honestly, because I have a lot of things to talk about. Brooke is with a woman this time around, which I think added more conflict, because she did ruin her engagement because she hooked up with Gina, because she hooked up with Savannah. And I think it did show like a little bit more about how weird and unhinged Savannah was, because she just kind of let it happen. She just like let it happen. and that was like weird. But I think it kind of showed like, oh, Savannah's just in here just messing every little thing up. And then after she hooks up with Brooke the first time, she like goes in and exposes like her body to Stan. So you're thinking, what, the red flag? That's weird. Ew. And they do talk about it in the book. I was kind of hoping that we would escape the whole like old man preying on a young woman thing, because Savannah does set that up to be like a story, because it just makes me like physically ill, versus if Brooke chose to cheat with Savannah, that's just like a decision that's made. But the whole like Savannah intentionally putting her like body out there and like touching Stan, like, I don't know if you can call it preying on somebody when like they're the younger person, but I mean like she's essentially like preying on him, being destructive towards him, because like she is gonna mess it up for him. I was really hoping we were gonna avoid that, but we didn't. And she just really was just causing destruction in every part of Joy's life because she just wanted to. So yeah, Brooke is with a woman this time around, which I think she had a partner that was a man. But something I will bring up later that I just have to bring up now was the fact that we see all of the Delaney's in their relationships and we see all of their relationship issues. I wish we focused more on Brooke's business failing because that was a large part in the book, but it was not a large part in the TV show. It was just kind of like, my business was failing. I felt insecure. I cheated on you. I'm sorry. In the book, we get a description of, my business is failing. I've always wanted to succeed and blah, blah, blah. It was like it was the point that we got to know Brooke through her relationship to work versus her relationship to a relationship. Is just kind of like, we have enough of that in the show. In the book, Logan is a professor versus in the show, he works at a marina with boats. I don't know what the heck a marina is if that's not evident. He works at a marina with boats. Stan and I think a little bit of Joy don't really respect his job. They kind of view it as like, like, you can just let us through. We're family. Who cares? This is just a glorified, like, you're like fake security, you know? And I don't remember if they said that about him having his professor job in the book, but in the TV show, which is very clear that, like, they didn't. They didn't think highly of his job and profession as they do kind of Troy's. So, and then also Stan initially disposes of the body in the boat versus in the boat on the show versus the neighbor catching it on camera in the book. Obviously, Stan was not disposing of the body. He was just throwing away certain things. I think it was like the carpet in the book versus the trophies in the show, which is really interesting. Maybe I'm forgetting this, but I don't think Troy had an affair with his boss's wife in the book, but it was a very interesting little twist to throw in because it just kind of shows his disregard for people when he goes after something that he wants. I personally felt like Troy might have been a love addict because if you don't know anything about love addicts, which I literally like barely know anything about love addicts, but from what the little I do know is that they will destruct most relationships that they're in. They are always chasing some sort of love feeling, but it's never going to be stable because they don't know necessarily how to properly love. It's all due to stemming from chasing some sort of love from childhood. As we know, Troy was like very discarded and at one point assaulted by his dad. Like abused by his dad physically when it did not need to happen. Yeah, let's talk about that even. The idea that Troy was hit by Stan because he was breaking up a fight. Like, the fight had already been broken up, and then Stan just hits Troy. That was very it was disturbing to see because it made me really just, like, feel for him. Like, you feel for somebody when you see them being hit by their father. Oh my god, and then Stan didn't even really apologize. He kind of was just like, you were in a fight with him. I need to get him off you. You're horrible. Like, god. And we do hit on that in the book, the fact that Harry was a cheater and then he did take advantage of that and then Stan kind of just let him. But to see that Stan like pretty much blamed Troy for the whole entire thing, his whole entire life, is tough. The Joy affair in the book is not as big of a deal because Stan in the book does not really care that much. Stan doesn't bring it up to her, and in the book it's just like a kiss. Like, she kissed somebody at a holiday party or like a party or I don't know, their house, but it wasn't like this ongoing affair. It was just like a one-time thing. And then versus the show, it's just like the children stumble upon these letters and are like, Dad, what is this? And Brooke is like, how could you say that I'm a bad person? Your wife cheated on you and you took her back. You know, it was like a much more dramatized thing. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have been dramatized. I'm kind of being, it's a much more dramatized. They just cheated on him. But like, I found that they're trying to make it a larger plot point to make Joy look a little bit more like a flawed human being. When in the book, Joy does have that flaw, but it's a little bit more understandable in the book versus the TV show, which is like, Stan has that one thing to hold over her head of just, you had an affair! Like, I feel like that's what they brought it up for. Also, in the letters, it's like, okay, yeah, we know about this affair, but like, what happened? Because in the book, we know they kissed. But in the letters, it's like, did they sleep together? Did they have like months? Did they have a day? what the heck happened? We get to see Amy's roommate also, another one of the standouts, which is so much more interesting in the book or in the TV show than it is the book, because he's 24 and she's probably like reverse his age at this point. I looked it up just to make sure, like I didn't write that down, and like maybe she's like 30. She's like 41. Well, Allison Bree's 41, so I'm assuming Amy must follow a little bit of that. Show, I think, did a better job of explaining their dynamic than the book did, because the book was just like, I can't be in love with somebody. Everybody always leaves me. I don't like having routine. I can't stick to like anything. Well, I'm so afraid of love. But it makes sense as to how she's like physically struggling, because like they have an age gap. And it's weird because she's like his roommate. She has like 3 roommates or whatever. In the show, Harry Haddad's father fired Stan after the Harry and Troy fight. I don't remember if in the book that Harry Haddad's father fired Stan after the fight, or if that was just kind of like he fired me, I don't know why. I think it was he fired me, I don't know why. We're made to believe that in the book it wasn't really Troy's fault, but Troy did have the pain and resentment towards his dad because Harry did cheat, as opposed to it being like, you're the reason that he got fired, I completely forgot to add some things that were different, that were very, like, it would be responsible of me not to add them in. That Savannah, at the very end, she, in the book, exposes that Joy fired Joy told Harry's dad to fire Stan. But in the TV show, all of a sudden, Joy just admits, oh, I fired him, I had to save the family. And that's why everybody's mad at Joy. And then also that Joy's disappearance, Joy in the book initially did escape with Savannah, but the main difference is that like they went to a retreat together, which that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you're like reported as missing for a decent amount of days and you're just at this retreat, the police should find you, versus that made a lot more sense in the TV show for Joy to be missing at Savannah's little house. It just was interesting, the lack of information we got on Savannah in the show versus the book. The book does such a better job capitalizing on the differences. I know I'm missing a lot of differences. I don't want to dissect the whole entire show. If you want to comment some, let me know, because I know I'm missing a few things. What I liked about the book that the show lacked. So I didn't find that there was like much, if any, emotional depth to Savannah. You just look at her as this villainous character who's meant to like destruct everything, and she mentions being abused like one time at the end in the car. She's like, everybody wanted to be with Harry, and once you took away my dad from my life, it made Harry famous, and every time I saw Harry on the TV I got angry. And but it literally, like, that was like one point in the show, but the book really exposes why Savannah is the way that she is. I can see people watching the show being like, screw Savannah. What do you mean we should feel for her, that she was neglected and abused? She was horrible. She was a stalker. She threatened Harry and his family. She like randomly showed up at the Delaney's house. There's nothing redeeming about her. Like in the book, in the show, I'm like, who cares about Savannah? I don't want to see her be redeemed or anything. But in the book, you see and understand why she's turned out how messed up as she's turned out. She was severely abused, severely neglected. She initially, for the first time, met Joy and Stan whenever Harry was being dropped off for like his tennis lessons or like for some sort of something. She ended up at their house. Her mom wouldn't let her eat, so she ate at the Delaney's house because they had a bunch of food at this like nice house. And then somebody like went, and I think it was maybe Brooke, shooed her like away from like the food, and were like, get out of here, when Savannah was just like hungry as a child. And Savannah had been like starved for like most of her life and developed an eating disorder because her mom would not let her eat. And it was shown in the last couple chapters of the book that Savannah had this huge problem with eating, and she would bring it up to her mom and be like, I thought that you said that I couldn't, like, pretty girls don't eat, blah, blah, blah. I thought that you said that and her mom, like, dismissive, not listening to any of her pain. Savannah eventually locks her mom up and like leaves her there to die. And you're low-key rooting for it. Because Savannah's story was not dealt with the same depth and care as it was in the book. Versus in the show, you're like, okay, she's just a psycho that's coming in here to ruin the Delaney's lives, and it's like weird for her. But you truly do see apples never fall. The reason why apples never fall far from the tree, because Savannah has these horrible destructive issues and tendencies because of her family and the biological issues that they go through. I stand by that. I think that Savannah should have had her own episode because there was a lot of content there. Like if you just made it 8 episodes, I think it would have been perfect. But I don't know anything about literally anything as how it relates to a show translating or a book translating into a show. I just really liked the Savannah aspect in the book and it made me cry. And I didn't like Savannah in the show, and you don't want to feel for her and you don't want to empathize with her. Please let me know what you thought of this. Please look in my bio to see ways you can support me, or simply just give me a like or a comment or a share. I hate asking for those things. But yeah, if you like this in any way, shape, or form, please give me anything you can. You can also buy me a coffee to support me. I hope you have a good morning, afternoon, or night.